everybody in this conversation has so much passion for what we're trying to do here. And we're really trying to breed that more profitable, balanced cow.
One of the biggest things for me was making sure that we're selecting a cow that people actually want to breed.
I know all the detail that has gone into this and all the time and effort that has been put into it, that I can have the confidence. I can look at this composite and okay, this is what I want to use to breed the kind of cow I want to breed.
We continue to take this breed to new levels, and it's exciting. I think this accelerates our progress.
Welcome to Holstein Connections, where we share the latest stories, insights, and news from Holstein Association USA and beyond. The largest dairy cattle breed association in the world, Holstein Association USA provides leadership, information, and services to help dairy producers worldwide be successful. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. This is Holstein Connections. Hello, Holstein enthusiasts, and welcome back to the Holstein Connections podcast. In today's discussion, we're going to be going over the highlights of the new Holstein Conformation Composite, which is abbreviated as HCC. The HCC is a new selection tool designed to help breeders identify animals with a combination of conformation traits most closely associated with balance, functionality, and long-term durability. Joining me for today's discussion is Director Jeff King, who serves as the chair of our Conformation Advisory Committee, Dwight Rokey, the Holstein Association USA Vice President, along with Dr. Jeffrey Bewley, who is our Executive Director of Genetic Programs and Innovation, and Dr. Jason Graham, our Genetic Evaluation and Research Scientist. Welcome to the podcast, everyone, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be with.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Jeff, why don't you go ahead and start by giving us a little introduction here for our listeners?
I'm Jeff King, and I'm one of the directors at Holstein USA. We dairy farm with my family and myself in the eastern part of New York State and milk a little over 3,000 head of registered Holsteins.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Dwight, let's hear a little bit about you and your operation as well.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Yeah, Dwight Rokey, currently serving as the vice president of the association. I'd served on the board for 7 years and on the Conformation Advisory Committee, all of them years, and chaired that for the final year. So we're located in Northeast Kansas, Rokey Road Holsteins. We milk 100 registered Holstein cows, my family and I. And yeah, we enjoy what we do.
Thank you, Dwight. And Dr. Graham, I know you're new to the team here, so give us a little introduction as well.
My name's Jason Graham. I joined the association as the Genetic Evaluation and Research Scientist in July 2025. I grew up in 4-H and FFA in California, and I really got my start in dairy at NC State through the Dairy Science Club and a farm apprenticeship on a dairy in Western North Carolina. I really loved working with the dairy cows, and I stayed at NC State for my master's in animal genetics, where I focused on dairy crossbred research. I then completed my PhD at Purdue studying calf resilience using automated milk feeding recorder data.
Thanks, Jason. And Dr. Bewley, you're a return podcast guest, but I think we should get a little introduction from you here as well.
All right. I've been with Holstein now for about 6 years and really enjoy the opportunity to work with our breeders. That's the best part of my job, is to get to work with people that are enthusiastic about breeding cows, as I am also. So I've been involved in the dairy industry since I was a little kid and love this industry. I love the Holstein cow.
To start off the conversation, Jeff, let's have you read the mission statement for us.
Sure. The committee and staff worked together to formulate the mission statement, and it reads as follows. The Holstein Conformation Composite is a selection tool designed to identify animals with the combination of conformation traits most associated with balanced, functionally correct Holstein cattle. The HCC emphasizes intermediate optimum values for key traits that support long-term functionality. It promotes moderate frame size, balanced udders built for longevity and production potential, and sound feet and legs. The HCC identifies cattle that move well, maintain structural soundness, and produce profitably across many lactations, representing the balanced, durable cow that dairy producers recognize as their most profitable. Developed through collaboration between experienced breeders and the empirical analysis of Holstein USA's comprehensive database of linear conformation and production records, the HCC provides breeders an alternative to predicted transmitting ability for type, or PTAT, by weighting individual conformation traits based on breed priorities, considering the relationships between traits rather than being based on final score alone. The formula is evaluated periodically by Holstein Association USA's Conformation Advisory and the Genetic Advancement Committees to ensure it continues to advance the Holstein breed and serve the evolving needs of breeders worldwide.
Dwight, take us back. When was this idea first suggested? I know it's something that has been in the works for a while. What did the process of coming up with HCC look like from your perspective?
Yeah, Emily. So this has been in the works for quite a few years. When it first came up, I would say it's been several years, maybe like 3.5 years ago at a Conformation Advisory Committee meeting in Chicago. And just hearing a lot from breeders and our members, what the kind of cows we're looking for. And you see the change in the industry as far as feeding and the change in facilities and all that. And we were just recognizing maybe our cow or what we were searching for and PTAT wasn't necessarily fitting what majority of breeders were wanting. So I think we kind of tossed things around, and I remember mentioning like, well, why don't we come up with some kind of a conformation index at that point? And so we kind of challenged staff a little bit to start working on this, and Dr. Bewley was involved, and then it just over time caught a little more traction, and then Dr. Graham came on board, and they really dove into it and started figuring things out. At that time, I had no idea that there were so many traits that were so correlated and there were so many different things going on. To me, it was like, you know what, you just pick your perfect cow and you make some kind of index to match her and life goes on. But it was much more complicated than that.
Jeffrey, what key traits that support long-term functionality does HCC emphasize, and why is this important?
So the Holstein Conformation Composite focuses on breeding a moderate-sized cow with balanced udders and sound feet and legs. That's the overarching goal of the HCC. We've also put emphasis on trying to increase teat length and improve rear teat placement by increasing rear teat placement. And there's an emphasis on trying to get more strength and stature. And all of these traits are what our breeders have suggested would be the best type of animal to be profitable long-term within their herds. And we have data to support this concept.
And how does HCC compare to PTA type?
So it's very different. I think a lot of people, and even myself in the past, was confused about PTA type. PTA type is based on final classification score. It's not a composite. HCC, on the other hand, is a composite of all the linear traits. So it's a bit more quantitative in how it's derived. And it is, again, aimed toward that balanced cow that we talked about a minute ago. So the overall objective is to breed that animal that fits, I think, what breeders would like to see. So we really incorporated a lot of breeder intuition into development of HCC, but then we also took a very data-driven approach to come up with the actual value. So it's a combination of breeder intuition and data-focused analysis.
And how does it compare to fitness traits like productive life and fertility, for example?
So that also was a consideration in development of the HCC. And one of the encouraging things about HCC is that when we look at the correlations between HCC and productive life, livability, cow conception rate, we see much better correlations for those traits with the HCC than what we do for PTA type. So HCC should provide us with more of the animal that is more resilient to last in our herds.
So as you mentioned, Jeffrey, you used a data-driven approach combined with that breeder intuition to arrive at the trait weights. Jeffrey and Jason, would you want to dive in a little bit more on how that worked and how you arrived at the weights that you arrived at?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll start and I'll say, first of all, this was a very detailed, long process. Dr. Graham and I worked through hundreds of iterations of the HCC to get to this point. I think for us as scientists, it was really, really quite fun to work through this. We like doing this kind of data analysis, but we started with sort of the goals that the breeders had indicated through our committees over the years as where to begin for that. And then I think the key point in the HCC that really differentiates HCC from anything that's ever been done is the quantitative approach that really was led by Dr. Graham. And I really want to take a second here to say, Dr. Graham's new to our team, but this is a huge contribution already, and it's been great to work with him on this. But I'd like Dr. Graham to explain kind of the quantitative approach that we took there.
Yeah, so one big thing with the HCC versus PTAT is, like Dr. Bewley said, PTAT is based on final score. So it's not very flexible on how we change, kind of how we adapt selection with our bowl of the future. While with HCC, we took all 18 linear traits and were able to change various weights based on the 18 heritabilities for those traits, but then also the 324 genetic correlations between all those traits. So when we consider the relationship of all these traits together, it allows us to better create the weights required to, fit the overall conformation that we're going for.
Yeah, I think that's really, really unique and really exciting is that the formula for HCC accounts for all of those underlying correlations. And there's no way that any of us can think through what 324 correlations mean. But basically what that does is it allows us to really achieve that balance in a way that we can't necessarily do looking at traits one by one. And so some things in the HCC might look a little different than what we would expect them to look because they're inherently considering the underlying correlations between all of the traits that we have.
So Jason, can you explain what the average linear profile of high-ranking bulls is expected to look like?
Yeah, sure. So from our analyses that we performed, we found that the average bulls will be closer to the average for stature, positive for strength, body depth, and dairy form, higher on feet and legs, and then they're going to have high and wide udder height and width with symmetrical teat placement and a bit longer teats.
So will the profiles be seeing extremes or will they be on a center line there? What will that look like, Dr. Graham?
So the profiles are going to be a much more moderating, while for the PTAT, it was more selecting on the extremes. The approach now is to have a more moderate, well-formed animal.
The countdown is officially on for the 2026 National Holstein Convention in Orlando, Florida, held June 22nd through 25th. Join fellow Holstein enthusiasts from across the country for an event packed with education, networking, youth contests, tours, and unforgettable moments that celebrate the Holstein breed and the people behind it. Registration will be available through May 20th. New this year, convention attendees can choose from 2 all-inclusive packages to make it simpler to get the whole convention experience. The 2026 convention has something for everyone. Learn more at HolsteinConvention.com. We can't wait to welcome you to the 2026 National Holstein Convention in Orlando, Florida.
So now that we know a little bit about what the HCC is and how we got there, I think it's important that we acknowledge the true collaboration that it was between the Conformation Advisory Committee and the Genetic Advancement Committee, along with, of course, staff analysis from the Holstein Association database of linear conformation and production records. So Jeff, as current chair of the Conformation Advisory Committee, I'm sure you've had many conversations about this. What type of feedback did breeders on the committee or others have when you really began discussing this idea?
Sure, it was interesting to me that when we worked with breeders on those committees, I think it was important, and we had representation, I think, from all corners of our industry, from small to large, from traditional to more progressive. I think any type of breeder that is involved in our organization was represented in that room. And the exciting thing to me was, I think when we've had these conversations in the past, there's been a divide a little bit in the opinions of folks as to what our direction should be. And it was really impressive to me, I think, that there was very much unity in what our purpose was there and what our goals were. It was exciting to see very, very broad support from kind of all aspects of the industry. At one of our committee meetings, I had an older member who had talked about serving on some of these committees in the past. And he said, yeah, we got together years ago and we talked about this and we talked about stature increasing and it was becoming an issue. He said, we talked about it and at the end of the day, we never made any progress. And at the end of our meeting and some of the decisions we made, he said, I'm really excited. And he couldn't say enough good about the direction that we were taking and some of the, what I think is bold action toward changing how we define the future of our breed.
Dr. Bewley and Dr. Graham, when you really started digging into the data, what stood out to you, and did it align with what Jeff and Dwight and other fellow registered Holstein breeders were saying?
We've done a lot of analysis of conformation data related to lifetime production and lifetime days in milk. And we have a data set of about 1 million cows that we've worked through where we have quantified the relationships between all of our linear traits and lifetime days in milk and lifetime energy corrected milk. And some of you probably have seen some of that work. It's on our website under the Million Reasons Why link if you're interested in studying that a little bit more. But some of the relationships realistically were a little bit surprising. So it is quite evident, for example, that smaller cows tend to last longer and have more lifetime production. There is a point of diminishing return on size. And that includes something like body depth, for example. Increased body depth is not necessarily a good thing, which might be counterintuitive for many of us who have spent our lives looking at cows. When we look at a lot of the feet and leg traits, not surprising that those have intermediate optimums. And then when we look at the udder traits, it's really clear that udder should be a major emphasis for us, because having a higher, wider rear udder with a stronger fore udder attachment, those are really important traits to the lifetime production of the animal. So when we say we looked at data, we looked at a lot of data in this process to understand what traits really have an influence on how much that animal produces across her lifetime. And that's not the only thing, of course, that's important to profitability of an animal, but it's really important to the profitability of the animal. So we wanted to understand the underlying real data. And again, this is based on over 1 million cows that we looked at, along with that intuition that we have among some of the best breeders in the country. That's really who I would say sits on our committees. We have breeders on our committees that think about this all the time. And being able to listen to all the members of the committee and all the feedback that they received from other people that they brought to the committee meeting, that's what separates this HCC from anything that's been out there before, is that Jason and I, as scientists, really tried to look at it quantitatively as well as we could, but we also had all of that conversation. So it's a truly collaborative effort between scientists and breeders to come to this HCC.
And how were you able to tie all that information together? What did those discussions look like? How were you able to bring it together to form what is now HCC?
One of the biggest things for me was making sure that we're selecting a cow that people actually want to breed. So really going like nailing down of, okay, so we create a draft of what this index, what kind of cow this index is going to be selecting for, this bull this index. Is this what people want? Is this close to what people would like? And so we would have to workshop and go back and forth and say, okay, is this what you want? And then if they said, no, we want something more like this, we would have to go and basically I'd have to pencil out the math to try to get us to that destination.
It was really an iterative process where we actually had multiple versions of this that we shared with the committee and went back to the drawing board each time. So it's not like we said, here's the final version and everybody said, good, let's go for this. We went back and forth with the committee to make sure we got this to a good point. And like I say, it was really an enjoyable exercise. I think we all learned a lot from the process. And as data geeks, I think we really enjoyed it a lot. And the cool thing is, to me, everybody in this conversation has so much passion for what we're trying to do here. And we're really trying to breed that more profitable, balanced cow. And I think HCC is going to be able to do this in a way that probably nothing ever has before. I think this is one of the most innovative things that I've been involved in my career. And I'm really excited about the potential that HCC has for improving the Holstein cow long term.
Jeff, from your perspective, I'm curious what that process was like going back and forth with Dr. Graham and Dr. Bewley to arrive at what you as breeders felt was important.
Felt like a basketball game. We were passing the ball back and forth and trying to take shots. Every time we get really close, but then we have to, regroup and try shooting again.
Yeah, Jeff, from your perspective, what was that like?
Yeah, I think it was fun too. I consider myself a little bit of a data geek and I love studying bull proofs and genetics and so forth. But surprisingly, when I started visiting with people on the committee, I realized there are actually people that spend more hours than I do at this, and that was impressive. They might not have much of a social life, but they really do enjoy genetics, and it's fun to tear it apart and discuss, and not only think about theory, but also to look at how those things work in our herds and have that interaction as far as what we see as breeders. And I think that is part of the power of this whole thing, is bringing together data, and as Jeffrey and Jason pointed out, data analysis and also a breeder intuition into the final decision as to what makes sense. I learned a lot in the process for sure.
Absolutely. So Jeff and Dwight, as registered Holstein breeders, what makes you excited to have HCC as another tool in your toolbox?
I think what gets me the most excited is because I'm more of a visual guy, so we've got these other fellows here on the podcast, especially Dr. Bewley and Dr. Graham, who love looking at analysis and running all the different things and figuring that all out. And I love it when they can present to me in one slide, this is what this looks like. And then I can look and visualize in my mind what this cow looks like. And I can see the cows in my barn. I can see the cows in other people's barns when we all want to breed a good, balanced, functional cow. So for like a one-stop shop, and I know all the detail that has gone into this and all the time and effort that has been put into it, that I can have the confidence. I can look at this composite and like, okay, this is what I want to use to breed the kind of cow I want to breed. And whatever member wants to do that or breeder, he can use that with pretty solid confidence, because the amount of effort and the time and all the data, like when Dr. Billy mentioned the Million Reasons Why study, I think that was very eye-opening for all of us to see and to realize and move in that direction.
Jeff, anything to add on your end?
I think Dwight makes a great point, the one-stop shop. To me, this makes it easier, I think, to identify the type of genetics that I'm looking for. And when you compare and contrast the new composite with PTA type, there were plenty of times that I heard people say, it's just, I don't really use that anymore. I use it, but then I look at other linears and I put a lot of things together to make my final decision. And I think that this makes things a little bit easier to really kind of identify those cows that are going to perform and be profitable in our herds.
What impact do you think the implementation of HCC will have on the future of the Holstein breed?
I think it's going to have a pretty significant impact, especially in the stage we're in now. And we see that the Holstein breed, just with the stature getting maybe a little out of control, to get that curtailed and come back and to get that moderate frame cow that maybe uses her feed efficiency a lot better in her production and is just more athletic and can get around and move about in whatever environment we're in. I think this is something that's really going to excel and get to that point in a good way.
And Emily, I agree that I'm excited about where it can take the breed, because when you think about greater correlations with livability, greater correlations with fertility, so many things that matter in our day-to-day management, and then you combine that with the conformation that we as breeders have all kind of really strive to build in the Holstein breed, I think it takes us eventually takes us to a new level. We continue to take this breed to new levels, and it's exciting. I think this accelerates our progress.
Awesome. Is there anything else that any of the four of you want to mention or touch on that we haven't had a chance to discuss yet as it relates to HCC?
I think just from my standpoint, I'm really excited to see this come to fruition and to see this implemented. It just is really neat from the get-go to hear from members, and then through the committee process, and then having staff work on things and the back and forth that we had. It's just really neat to see how it's all come about. And it's just going to be a really positive thing for our association and the breed.
One other thing that I would say is that when we start looking at the individual linears of animals with the HCC, or what animal really excels on the HCC, there may be some things that surprise people. And some of that probably is related to some of the underlying correlations. For example, my gut feeling on certain traits might be that all of the udder traits, for example, or many of the udder traits like rear udder height, rear udder width, and fore udder attachment, that the STAs perhaps should be toward a 3 on those individual traits. That's just kind of what I have in my mind when I think about the ideal udder for an animal. The problem is, and why those animals might not always excel on the HCC, is that in order to get that, because of the underlying correlations, we end up back toward that really large animal. Because ultimately, in the underlying data set, the data kind of says that in order to have those extreme udder traits, you also have to have extreme body size, which none of us really think that's necessarily the case. But because of that, we really end up with a more moderate 1.5 to 2, for example, as the optimum for the STAs on traits like rear udder height and rear udder width. And that might be a little bit surprising to see that when we look at some of these linears. I know it was for me. And believe me, that was part of our discussion in the process, is saying, well, I don't think that's far enough to the right to me. Let's see what we can do. But unfortunately, the underlying data really says we can't do that and maintain that goal of having that moderate sized animal. So one of the things that when I think about this, and believe me, it's because I thought about it so much, is that those underlying correlations and the relationships that are there, none of us can wrap our minds around 324 correlations. So we have to kind of trust the process, understand that the model is accounting for all of those underlying correlations simultaneously. So some things may be a little bit surprising. And I think it's important also to look at the entire breed. You know, we can't design an equation or a model for one animal or two animals. We're looking at the entire population. And there are individual animals that might rate really, really high on the HCC that have a flaw because there's 18 traits in there. So it might look like it's close to what we want, but maybe the pin height is a little too high, or the leg set is a little too one way or the other. And that can be surprising. We're not looking at individual animals. We don't develop genetic tools for individual animals. We develop them for the breed. And so it's a little surprising sometimes when we look at this, but again, I think that the process to get here is really detailed and really thought out from both the breeder perspective and the genetic perspective. One thing I'd like Jason to touch on, if you could kind of describe that 10 generation improvement. For example, that chart, how you were able to show that even though it might not look we're making as much progress on some of these traits, we're still moving toward higher, wider rear udders, and we do actually project toward that smaller cow, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure, Jeffrey. So essentially what I did was to make sure we're going in the right direction, because I don't have a crystal ball, but when I'm thinking about genetic selection and breeding, I'm thinking 5 to 10 years into the future. So I want to know that if we're going to perform this composite, are we going to see the improvements that we're expecting? And one thing, it's very difficult, like Jeffrey said, to moderate that stature without also taking a little bit off the gas of some of the other traits. But essentially what I did was I took the current averages of the population, and then I derived a simulation that showed that we were making those improvements to where we wanted to go 10 years into the future. So based on if everyone started taking the HCC right away, within 10 years, we should really get to where we want to be.
Thanks for walking us through that, Jason. Before we wrap up here, could you also quickly explain what the plan is for HCC to be published initially? Just give us a little brief overview on that.
Yeah, sure, Emily. So first, we're going to publish the HCC composite for the current bull list by July 1st is the plan. And then we're going to roll it out as an independent trait by August 1st.
All right. Now, just to get to know all of you a little bit better, we're going to wrap up with 5 would you rather questions. I think just to make it easy, let's just go in the same order for every question. So we can go Jeff, Dwight, Jason, Jeffrey. So to kick it off, cheddar, mozzarella cheese.
Cheddar.
Mozzarella.
Jason?
Cheddar all day long.
Extra sharp cheddar.
Extra sharp, but me too, Jeffrey. Genomic or proven sire?
Genomic.
Proven.
A little bit of both.
The best available.
The geneticist can't choose. Early morning milking or late night barn check?
For me, it's late night barn check.
Boy, Jeff, we're just about to disagree on all of them. For me, it's no doubt an early morning.
10 years ago, it would have been late night barn check, but I think early morning milking.
Late night, I'm a night owl.
Black and white or red and white Holstein?
I love them all, but I would prefer black and white.
There we go. Whichever one's good, but black and white is fine with me.
I like the black and whites, but also I like rebels, so red and whites too. There's some interesting ones out there, I think.
Whichever one scores highest for HCC.
I love it. All right. Last question. Would you rather have an unlimited supply of ice cream or an unlimited supply of fitting supplies for a year? And Jeff, this question might be a little bit unfair for you. I think you might already have an unlimited supply of ice cream there at King's Ransom, but
Well, in terms of probably what's near and dear to my heart, ice cream would probably rank up there pretty good.
Yeah, I think the fitting selection of stuff kind of evolves and changes over time, but you know what? The love of ice cream never changes, so ice cream is good.
yeah, you have an unlimited supply of ice cream there too, Dwight.
So if it could be an unlimited supply of chocolate shop ice cream in Madison, I would probably be in heaven right there. But that would also be very dangerous. So
Extra sharp cheddar.
Jeffrey just wants the unlimited supply of extra sharp cheddar. That's perfect.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Holstein Connections. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. Until next time, this is Holstein Connections.